It appears that President Trump is the target of this federal investigation. So now, listen, I know some of you are thinking, well, obviously he's the target of the investigation, except there's a nuance here you've got to understand legally. It doesn't get through in the news. The Jack Smith investigation of the classified documents, they could be looking at Trump, but also if there's anyone else to blame. There have been a number of people in press reports that have been suggested as possible people to be indicted other than Donald Trump. Is there a fall guy? In other words, are people looking for a fall guy? So it is notable that the notice from the Office of Special Counsel Jack Smith to the president telling him he is a target of the investigation means they want to indict him. Now, you and I have known they wanted to indict him. The question was, did they actually give it a go? It appears they're going to. This is from the New York Times. Federal prosecutors have informed the legal team for former President Donald Trump he's the target of their investigation into his handling of classified documents after he left office, according to two people familiar with the matter. The notification to Mr. Trump's team by prosecutors from the Office of the Special Counsel was the clearest signal yet that the former president is likely to face charges in the investigation. It remains unclear when Mr. Trump's team was told that he was a target of the special counsel's inquiry, but the notice suggested the prosecutors working for Mr. Smith had largely completed their investigation. There have been two grand juries operating in this classified document case, the one in New York in D.C., and also one in Miami. We only learned of the Miami one last week, and it suggests that what actually happened is Jack Smith realized they had a venue problem. So let me explain venue to you. Venue is essentially where do you file the lawsuit? There are rules in federal law. There's something called the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure for when you file a civil action, plaintiff versus defendant. And there are federal rules of criminal procedure when it's the state filing a suit against an individual, a criminal action against an individual. This would be under the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. And in the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, you file the lawsuit where someone resides. So if you're suing Donald Trump for something he did, you sue him where Donald Trump resides typically. Now, there are exceptions, but typically you sue where he lives. If, for example, a company in Boston, Massachusetts has a credit card and you don't pay your bill, they don't sue you in Boston, Massachusetts where the checks process or bounce. They sue you where you live in your state because that's where you live. They can also sue you where you have a lot of property. And so if you've got a lot of property in, say, I don't know, Texas, but you live in the Carolinas somewhere, and they really want your property and it's a suit about that property, they sue you in Texas where the property is. In criminal matters, though, they sue you where the crime occurred or where the nexus of the crime occurred. So if the crime occurred in multiple places, you try to argue that the bulk of it ran through a particular jurisdiction, and that's where you file your criminal case. In this case, the classified documents were in Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump lives at Mar-a-Lago. The investigators raided Mar-a-Lago. The lawyers arguing over the documents were in Mar-a-Lago. So you sue in West Palm Beach. You sue in the Southern District of Florida, which is in Miami, which covers that part of the state. It would cover West Palm Beach. So you file your criminal lawsuit there. So the grand jury must meet there. Well, there have been no word of a grand jury. The grand jury had been in Washington, D.C., where Trump had been when he was president. But news broke this week. There was actually one convened in Florida. They weren't sure why. It now appears it's because Jack Smith realized this case needed to be in the Southern District of Florida, which means you've got to get a grand jury indictment from Florida, not from Washington, D.C., which means they had to move the whole thing down there, which means they're probably very close to getting this matter wrapped up for a lawsuit. Now let's pivot because this obviously relates to 2024. The field has filled in. If you want to see the lay of the land, text data to 33777. Get my email today. Sign up for it. Read it. My post today. With the entries of North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and former Vice President Mike Pence, the GOP field is suddenly filled in and formed. 2016 saw 17 candidates that Donald Trump beat, or 16 candidates. Donald Trump was the 17th. This year, we got 10 total candidates. So we got Doug Burgum, Chris Christie, Ron DeSantis, Larry Elder, Nikki Haley, Asa Hutchinson, Mike Pence, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Tim Scott, and they're all challenging Donald Trump. Arguably his to win, his to lose. He's at 50% plus in the polling averages. What's notable is whether or not the 9 other candidates are going to go after him or are they going to go after Donald Trump. We need to remember our history. In 2016, when you got to March, there were 3 men left standing. John Kasich, the liberal Republican governor of Ohio, Ted Cruz, the conservative senator from Texas, and businessman turned reality star Donald J. Trump. Ted Cruz decided to make his last stand in Indiana against Donald Trump. And John Kasich, the liberal governor of Ohio, poured every last penny he had into attacking Ted Cruz. John Kasich is not appreciated enough as the man who helped Donald Trump secure the Republican nomination because much of the Republican Party was shifting its support to Ted Cruz to stop Donald Trump. And Kasich came in with the suicide vest on and blew him up. Ted Cruz withdrew from the Republican primary on May 3rd, 2016. John Kasich did the next day, and Donald Trump became the nominee of the Republican Party. I will not be surprised to find some of the 10 candidates running for president due to Ron DeSantis, what John Kasich did to Ted Cruz. Many of them think we gotta go through DeSantis to get to Trump, but by then it will be too late. Republicans this time believe Donald Trump is the weakest candidate to go against Joe Biden. The polling suggests it, whether you believe it or not. They do. Chris Christie and Mike Pence seem to be making their case against Donald Trump pretty explicitly. So yesterday, Mike Pence formally declared his candidacy in Iowa, and he answered the question I have been telling you guys for a year he would have to answer. The question that only Mike Pence has to answer is why you instead of your boss? Nikki Haley, a little bit, maybe has to answer this, but in particular, this is a Mike Pence question. Donald Trump made Mike Pence the vice presidential nominee. So Mike Pence must answer, why should Americans choose him over Donald Trump? Yesterday on stage in Iowa, he made his case that on January 6, 2021, Donald Trump decided to ask Mike Pence to choose Trump over the Constitution, and Pence chose the Constitution over Donald Trump, and so now he's running for the Constitution against Donald Trump. He's going to kamikaze his campaign into Donald Trump. So is Chris Christie. That might actually help him. It could help someone else. Donald Trump has played a very conservative game. He's not going to show up at the first Republican debate in August. Won't come to the gathering. That's the week before. He won't go to the debate. He's staying off the stage. He's not barnstorming the country. He's doing some events, just not a lot of events. And you can't blame him. It's actually very smart politics. If you're leading at 50+% in the polling, why go out there and risk a mistake? Let the other candidates get on stage with Ron DeSantis and tear DeSantis apart. That's what he's hoping. Don't go to the debate. Chris Christie can't come after me. He's got to go after DeSantis. Don't go to the debate. Mike Pence can't come after me. He's got to go after all these other guys on stage, and they got to go after Pence, and they got to go after DeSantis, leaving Trump alone. It's smart politics. You can complain about it all you want. You can say he's hiding. It's really smart politics. But there is this problem. Indictments. The New York City one's a joke. Everybody understands the New York City case is a joke. It's garbage. You have a case in Georgia that's probably coming, and you now have a federal indictment. What's going to happen is Donald Trump is going to skyrocket in the polling. There's going to be a rally around the flag or rally around the candidate effect here. It's going to help him. But long term, there's the drip, 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 drip. The indictments cost money, and that money isn't going to come from Donald Trump. It's going to come from his campaign coffers. The indictments are going to cost him time. He's not going to be able to campaign. He's going to be in court. He's going to be tied up responding to that stuff, not to Biden, not to the other candidates. There is a trade-off here. He's got strong loyalty from candidates. In fact, I was reading an op-ed earlier that John Ellis, who writes this very informative newsletter, is making the case that the reason the DeSantis campaign is not launching the way they wanted to launch is because there is a loyalty issue, and you've got to gracefully pat the former guy on the head and say, Godspeed, God bless, good luck, we love you, before you push him out of the way. And DeSantis is trying to get Trump supporters to break that loyalty. That loyalty may be broken by the reality of we want to beat Biden. Do we want to win do we want Trump to be the nominee, or do we want to beat Biden? And if you see the whole world out to get Trump and dragging him down and making him waste his money and making him waste his time and going to court, do people then say, we love this guy, but they got him in some capacity? Whether they find him guilty and cart him off to jail or not, they've bogged him down so much. Maybe in 4 years we try it again. I don't have the answer to that. I can tell you what's going to happen is if he gets indicted in the federal case or the Georgia case, his popularity is going to skyrocket among Republicans. People will rally around the flag. At some point, though, someone's going to have to say, wait a second, you're going to be in court. You can't be on the campaign trail. You're going to spend your campaign dollars on your lawyers, not on your campaign. That's not going to work. What's going to happen? What's going to give? That's what some of these Republicans think is going to happen. And then you have Chris Christie and Mike Pence going after him. Will that matter? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball on this stuff. My sense is that a lot of it makes Trump stronger. My sense is also that many of these candidates, particularly the DeSantis people, are pulling the snot out of this race to try to find the chinks in the armor, the weaknesses, the spots where they can do maximum damage. And they now have Chris Christie and they now have Mike Pence in the race who recognize the path through the nomination does not run through DeSantis, but runs through Trump. The field is set. Indictments are coming. Will any of it matter? If I had to guess right now, in all honesty, I would say no, nothing matters.